Discover the incredible moment a black janitor shocked a millionaire CEO in just 3 moves. A life-altering encounter. David had always been the invisible man, the quiet janitor in a towering financial firm, where glass walls reflected dreams he had barely dared to whisper. At 45, his calloused hands told stories of hard labor and dedication, as he swept the polished floors beneath the feet of powerful executives, his warm smile a shield against the weight of his reality. Every evening, as he cleaned the glittering conference rooms and dusted the expensive artwork, he would think of his son, Malik, with hopes of college dancing in his mind. David's mother, Rosa, who raised him with grit and grace, was his compass, her struggles embedded in him like the grooves of a worn-out record. One late night in the hushed glow of sleek office lights, whispers of a corporate scandal flowed through the air, thick with tension. The embattled CEO, Michael, was on the edge, hanging by a thread that could snap at any moment. David moved through the flickering shadows, the burden of worries heavy in his chest. He thought of Malik, how he dreamt of a better life, how he wanted to break free from the cycle of fear and hardship. He thought of Rosa, frail and struggling to hold on. As he swept the executive suite, something caught his eye, a USB drive gleaming like a diamond in a heap of trash. David's heart pounded. He picked it up, sensing its weight, a risky piece of evidence that could shatter or save Michael's career. He held it tightly, feeling heat radiate from it, as if life-changing decisions were contained between those tiny plastic walls. What was he to do? Turn it in and become entangled in this corporate chaos? Or keep it as a bulwark against the storm? He looked around the empty room, the steel and glass feeling like barriers separating 2 worlds. He had to confront Michael. He held back a sigh, knowing well how that man saw him. When the moment came, the tension crackled. David stood tall, a janitor facing off against one of the most powerful men in the room. Michael eyed him with a mixture of disdain and curiosity. "What do you want?" He spat, but David's steadiness was like a lighthouse in the storm. "I found this." David held the USB drive up. "It's important." Michael scoffed, his arrogance filling the air. But as David laid out his moral dilemma, revealing the stakes of their own humanity, the walls around Michael seemed to crack, even if only a little. "Do you even know what you're talking about?" Michael retorted, trying to regain his control. But David's calm resolve held. Just as a flicker of understanding seemed to bridge their seemingly opposing worlds, the door swung open. Michael's peers rushed in, suspicion shadowing their faces. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Time. David's heart raced as he felt the weight of the decision crashing down around him. Can integrity lead to justice, or was he simply a pawn in someone else's game? The tension in that sleek office pulsed, threatening to shatter the fragile moment of understanding. Could he truly stand up for what was right when so much was at stake? The air was thick with uncertainty as the confrontation hovered on the edge, waiting for David's next move, the choice that could change everything. David stood frozen, the USB drive feeling heavier than ever in his hand. With Michael's peers crowding into the room, the atmosphere grew thick with uncertainty. Eyes darted between David and the executives, the tension palpable. His breath quickened, but his heart beat loudly in a chant of now or never. The moment called for courage. "David!" A voice boomed, cutting through the noise. It was Janine, one of the executives who often overlooked David, her disdain evident as she glared at him. "What are you doing in here?" "I found something important," David replied, his voice steady, defying the anxiety clawing at him. He raised the USB drive higher, as if it had the power to light the room. "It's about your company. This could expose everything." Laughter echoed around him, sharp and derisive. A janitor thinks he can bring down the company? How cute, sneered another executive, clapping mockingly. David felt the heat of embarrassment rising in his cheeks, but he reminded himself it was more than about him. It was about Malik. It was about Rosa. Enough. Michael's voice cracked like thunder, silencing the room. He looked at David, the disdain softening briefly to reveal a flicker of something else. Fear? What do you mean expose? David stepped forward, tapping into the bravado that surged through him. I know there's wrongdoing. I've seen and heard things. But this could help you too. You can own your mistakes instead of letting them bury you. Michael's expression changed. The arrogance began to dissipate, replaced by doubt. Around the room, the mood shifted slightly, the executives' laughter replaced by murmurs of confusion. Here was a janitor pushing against the boundaries of power, defying the corporate hierarchy that demanded silence. Let me understand this, Michael's voice dropped, the weight of authority still poised above but cracking. You've got dirt on this company, and you're offering it to me? For what? A pat on the back? No, David took a breath, but I'm giving you a chance to do the right thing. There's a way out for you. An honest way. The challenge hung in the air, daring Michael to respond. For a heartbeat, time felt suspended, like everything had paused to witness this unlikely showdown. David could hear the rustle of suits, the shuffle of feet, the whisper of anticipation. Perhaps this was the moment where he would stand up and finally be seen. The tension snapped as Michael turned to his peers, battling between the image of a leader and the man he needed to be. You need to listen. If David is telling the truth, we might have to reconsider our course of action. But why would we trust him? One of the executives scoffed, glancing at David with scorn. He's just a janitor. Exactly. Michael said, now rising to the occasion, he's just a janitor. So why would he risk everything to stand before us like this? What does he have to gain? David felt adrenaline pumping, transforming into words he hadn't planned. People matter more than profits. I know what I'm risking by being here. I need my son to know that there's a different path, and I hope you understand that, deep down, you want the same. Silence enfolded them. In that moment, the chaos of corporate ambition settled before the weight of a father's love and an honest plea. David realized, against all odds, that he had changed the narrative. But then, just as a flicker of hope ignited, Michael's phone buzzed, shattering the fragile atmosphere. He glanced at the screen, the color draining from his face. We have a problem, he said, a tremor in his voice. The board is calling an emergency meeting, and they're not going to be happy about this. What had David sparked? Would he face a corporate backlash, or was this the beginning of a transformation he had only dared to dream? As the room held its breath, David felt the stirrings of fate. Would Michael step up, take the truth, and change the company for good, or would he crush the opportunity in an instant? The weight of a single choice hung in the balance, poised to change lives forever. David's heart raced as Michael's words hung in the air like thick smoke. The board? He had known things might escalate, but this felt like a whirlwind, and he was right in the center of it. He couldn't back down now. Not after all he had risked. Not when so many people's lives were at stake. You don't have to do this, David, Janine's voice pierced the moment, cold and calculated. You're in way over your head. This isn't your fight. You're wrong, David replied, his voice steadier than he felt. This is everyone's fight. We deserve to work in a place where honesty means something. The murmurs in the room swelled. He could see the doubt flicker among the executives, mixed with fear at what might happen next. If they ignored him now, would it come back to haunt them? Had they underestimated him? Michael ran a hand through his hair, still staring at the phone, anxiety visibly casting shadows over his features. What exactly have you got on us, David? And why shouldn't I just call security right now? If you do, you'll regret it, David pressed, seizing this moment. Each night, I empty these office bins while overhearing conversations. Some of it, it's just wrong. I was going to bury this USB in the hope your mistakes could be hidden. But now? The truth matters more. The momentum shifted, David could feel it. He could almost hear the gears turning in Michael's mind, wrestling with the implications of this unexpected confrontation. What's on that drive? Michael demanded, voice low, sifting through the moment of tension. Emails. Transactions. Plans. You're risking everything for a few bonuses while real lives hang in the balance. The unsaid echoed through the room. Michael had to choose. Keep it all under wraps and protect himself, or face the storm that truth could unleash. David could see the man struggling, the flickers of internal battle playing across his face. Janine scoffed, "What does a janitor know about business? This is just a pathetic stunt." But there was less bite to her words now, eyes narrowing, uncertainty creeping into her demeanor. David stood his ground. "Maybe I don't know business. But I know right from wrong. I know how it feels to struggle to make a living, to care for my family every day. People matter. They need to know there's a future where their voices count. I won't let my son think it's okay to let wrongdoing slide. Not anymore." Michael looked around the room, discomfort evident among his peers. If he dismissed David as a mere janitor, he risked losing everyone's respect, the connection with them shifting. They had expected him to simply turn away a lowly employee. But now? Would they see him as part of a broken system? "Listen, everyone," Michael said, his voice steady despite the quiver of nerves beneath. "Maybe it's worth hearing him out. Maybe we need to own our mistakes and rebuild together." David didn't breathe. It felt like the world paused again, everyone awaiting this seismic shift. Would it happen? Could Michael really pivot and embrace honesty in a room full of greed? Then came a loud bang as the door opened, startling everyone. A figure rushed in, a woman, intense and out of breath. "I heard there was an emergency meeting." Michael looked up, shock crashing down again. "Lori?" "Not now." But David squinted. He recognized her. She worked in HR, often chatting with him about mundane office things. Yet, today, she wore a determined look, as if she had a secret that might change everything. "David," she exclaimed, noticing him in the spotlight. "You need to tell them about the letter." "What letter?" David's stomach dropped, curiosity intermingled with dread. Had there been more lying beneath the surface? More than he ever imagined? Suddenly, this moment felt bigger, the stakes dangerously high. What did Lori know? And would Michael still have the courage to stand up for what was right after she spoke? David felt the urgency building. The answer loomed closer, and he feared what it might reveal. Lori's eyes darted anxiously from David to Michael, her breath hitching as she spoke. "The letter. It's about the restructuring plans. I found it last week while going through some files." Michael shifted uncomfortably, his earlier bravado seemingly evaporating. "What letter, Lori? This isn't the time for games." "No games," she insisted, walking toward him with purpose. "It outlines how they intended to cut vital positions without any consideration for the impact on families. It's not just a business decision, it's personal." David's heart sank. This was what it all boiled down to, a betrayal not just of principles, but of lives, futures, and hopes. He felt the weight of each pair of eyes in the room, their expectations teetering on the edge of a decision that could change everything. "David, you need to show them," Lori prompted, her voice strong despite the tremor beneath it. "If they see that letter, they'll understand what's really at stake." "How do you know this?" Michael asked, his skepticism resurfacing. "It was just sitting there," Lori replied, frustration creeping into her words. "No one thought to secure it. But I did, because I care about the people this company is tossing aside like they don't exist." At that moment, something lit inside David. This wasn't just about him anymore, this was about every person who went to work every day, never knowing if their job was safe, their family secure. He gestured toward Lori, bathed in the fluorescent light, illuminated by the truth she was willing to fight for. "Look around," David said, raising his voice, and the noise in the room quieted. "This is the fire we need. Together, we're stronger." Lori didn't just find a letter, she found the heart of what we're fighting for. These aren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They're moms, dads, kids. They deserve better. Michael's gaze softened, the trembling hands clenched at his sides uncurling slightly. "Show me the letter," he finally said, his tone shifting, as if the facade was cracking. With conviction, Lori pulled out the paper from her folder, handing it over. David's breath quickened, this was it. The spark needed to ignite a greater change was right in front of them. The room was morphed into an arena of emotions: fear, anger, but also hope swirling like autumn leaves. Would they all jump into this fight? Would Michael truly let go of the greed and embrace a new path? As Michael read, the silence stretched, thicker than the earlier tension. David watched the executives shifting in their seats, their eyes narrowing as realization dawned over them. Each person felt the weight of collective accountability as their reality was unraveled. Then, breaking the silence, Janine exclaimed, "You can't be serious. This is a corporate disaster waiting to happen. You'll ruin us." "No," David countered, black and white conviction filling his tone. "Ruin happens when the truth is hidden. We are better than this, and we have to prove it." In that pivotal moment, a flicker of change ignited within Michael and echoed through the faces around him. It was small but unmistakable, an awakening. David couldn't suppress a surge of warmth. He had taken a stand and, against the odds, pulled others into the fray. But the letter wasn't just a piece of paper, it had the power to change their lives fundamentally. Michael looked around, gathering courage. "We can either fight against what we've built or fight for something much greater. Something stronger than greed, something that could revolutionize their company and community." Just then, the overhead lights flickered ominously, and a loud crash echoed from the hallway. The door swung open again, this time spilling in another cluster of figures, a mix of security and a few familiar co-workers who had overheard the commotion. "David!" one of them called. "What's happening?" David felt the tension build again, this time fortified by a new wave of urgency. "Tell them the truth. They need to know." How many more secrets were hidden? Would this unfolding drama convey the change the company needed, or would outside forces crush their new vision before it began to take root? David couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The truth seemed close, but danger was circling in the wings, waiting to pounce. As he squared his shoulders for what was next, he took a breath. The world was ready to listen if only they could survive the storm. What revelations lay ahead? Secrets that could threaten their very future? The answers loomed like shadows, and David knew he had to dig deeper. The heavy air in the room became electric as the crowd shifted uneasily, their hushed whispers mingling with the buzz of tension. Faces reflected a mix of confusion and determination, uncertainty crafted the silhouettes moving near the door. David felt as if the walls were closing in, their destiny hung by a thread, one that could snap at the slightest push. "Everyone, listen!" he shouted as more people filled the space. "We have to band together right now. We're on the brink of losing everything we've built. Our families depend on us fighting this." The fresh group of co-workers hesitated, their eyes darting between David, Michael, and Lori, trying to grasp the gravity of the moment. Fear and vulnerability threaded through their expressions, but something stronger, the flicker of hope, was threading its way into hearts. Janine, her brows furrowed, shot David a skeptical glance. "And what do you suggest, Mr. Hero? We start a protest? You really think they'll care?" "More than you know," Lori said, stepping forward. "We can make them listen. We have the power to shake this company's foundation." Michael was noticeably quiet, arms crossed tightly at his chest. It was the first time David noticed that his colleague's usual bravado faltered, giving way to a man who seemed lost. David wondered if the letter had sparked something within him that couldn't be ignored. David pushed further. We need transparency. We need to let everyone know what's at stake before it's too late. We have a right to be in control of our future. From the back, someone shouted, and what makes you think they hear us? They just brush us aside like they always do. Another voice piped up. Yeah. They're powerful. We're just people. But we're people with families, hopes, and dreams. David exclaimed, his pulse racing as he saw more nods of agreement among the crowd. This isn't just corporate jargon. This is our lives. We can't just stand by. The murmurs shifted from fear to a rallying cry. Slowly, individual voices started joining in, building momentum. Let us take back our power. Someone yelled, and a ripple of energy surged through the group. David's heart swelled, the tide was turning. But that rush of adrenaline was cut off sharply by the flick of a flashlight beam illuminating the entrance. The security team had taken their position, their cold gazes sweeping across the room. A few gasps filled the silence. Everyone needs to disperse. This isn't a place for personal grievances, the lead guard declared, his voice hard like steel. But the collective will of the crowd hardened, the chaos erupted into charged emotions, and David stepped forward, unyielding. No. We're going to talk. We won't be silenced any longer. With a confident stride, he approached the guard. His heart hammered in his chest, but he held firm. We have a message to deliver, and it doesn't end here. We are not leaving until the truth is known. The guard, clearly rattled, couldn't find the words, his stance faltering ever so slightly. Lori whispered loudly enough for those near her to hear, "This is our chance to be heard. We'll show them we mean business." In that moment, David sensed both fear and exhilaration churning amongst the crowd. What had begun as a chaotic ripple now flowed into a wave of resilience ready to surge against the tide of oppression. But as they prepared to confront whatever lay ahead, David's eyes caught a glimpse of movement behind the security detail. A figure stepped forward, someone familiar yet unexpected. Keith, their former colleague, someone who had been silenced before, was back, but his presence didn't feel like a blessing. It felt like a balancing act, flickering between hope and caution. "David?" Keith called, concern etched across his face. "You need to be careful." What had he brought with him? What did he know that could change everything yet again? As David squared his shoulders, anticipating what Keith might reveal, the entire room held its breath. What did Keith want to say? Would it help or hinder their growing movement? Why did the storm feel closer, tightening the tension around them? A nameless dread settled in as David wondered if they were ready for the truth that awaited. The silence that stretched between David and Keith was palpable, thick with unspoken fears and necessary truths. The crowd's restlessness echoed in the background, each heartbeat fueling their resolve. David's chest tightened as he read the anxiety in Keith's eyes. There was no backing down now. They needed to hear whatever it was that Keith had to say. "Come on, Keith. What do you have?" David urged, gesturing toward him, willing him to speak. Keith hesitated, glancing at the security team, then back at the group, his expression filled with a mix of caution and urgency. "I've seen things you won't believe," he finally said, his voice steady despite the quiver that lurked underneath. "Things that could change how you see this whole situation. But we're running out of time." "What kind of things?" Lori stepped closer, her brows knitted together. Keith shook his head, the shadows of doubt flickering across his face like a candle's flame. "A story, a secret. I thought it was all buried," but he took a deep breath. "The truth is, they're hiding more than just layoffs. There's a plan, and it's bigger than any of us." It's about control and power. What does this mean for us? David pressed, feeling his heart race. Would this revelation breathe life into their fight or crush it? Keith scanned the room. There are contracts, agreements made behind closed doors. People are playing games with our lives, making decisions that can destroy entire families. It's not just about the company's future, it's about preserving our own. The crowd's murmur intensified, voices overlapping in a chaotic harmony of emotions. There was disbelief mixed with anticipation, like a spark before a fire. Are you in or out? David urged, urgency laced in his tone while bracing for the decision that hung in the air. I'm in, Keith declared, his resolve strengthening. But we have to move fast. If they notice that we're onto them, they will clamp down hard. Michael finally broke his silence, a fire igniting behind his eyes. What do you need from us? Just tell us how to fight back. Laurie stepped forward, the flicker of hope igniting into determination. Let us put everything on the table. Gather evidence. Rally our colleagues. We'll be the voice they can't silence. David nodded, the adrenaline surging again within him. Yes. We need to act now. But we can't just stumble into this, we need a plan. Keith's gaze locked onto David's. We can't show fear. We need strategy and strength. As they talked, the realities of their situation began to solidify into a firm purpose. Every voice present contributed fragments of ideas, creating a patchwork of courage designed to protect what they held dear. They were no longer just a group of worried co-workers in a room, they were a coalition ready to fight for their future, and as the planning began, David's heart soared with the resolve of the people around him. This was the turning point. They were no longer waiting for change, they were going to demand it, but just as the momentum built, a loud commotion from the entrance silenced the room once more. Someone pushed through the crowd, an unknown face, flanked by security. A messenger of the corporate world, perhaps? David's stomach churned at the sight. What message did they bring? What consequences awaited them all? Could this be the moment they faced the wrath of a system that wanted to crush them? His thoughts raced. The battle ahead was growing and the stakes were rising, but was their resolve strong enough to withstand the storm that was coming? The door swung open, and the unknown figure stepped into the room, eyes scanning the crowd with a calculating gaze. Silence descended, thick with unease as the people shifted, whispers dying on their lips. David's heart pounded in his ears. What was this person doing here? The newcomer was sharply dressed, exuding an air of authority that seemed to throb with the weight of the corporate world. Security stood at attention, ready to intervene at a moment's notice. David could feel the tension weaving through the crowd, aware that Keith had just opened a door they couldn't close. May I have your attention? The figure boomed, voice smooth yet commanding, cutting through the chatter like a knife. David noticed a glimmer of recognition in some faces, but he couldn't quite place it. The stranger stepped to the front and continued, I'm here on behalf of the company's executive board. A hush fell over the room. We have gotten wind of some unrest among the employees. I'm here to address your concerns directly. Disbelief rippled through the crowd. David felt anger simmering inside him. You don't get to dismiss us. You're the reason we're upset. He blurted out, emboldened by the gravity of the moment. Laurie nodded behind him, echoing the sentiment, we're tired of the lies and half-truths. How are we supposed to trust anything you say? The figure's lips curled into a faint smile, unfazed. Trust? That's a luxury, isn't it? But the company's priorities must come first, and changes are coming that will ensure our bottom line continues to flourish. They could feel the chill in the air, a sense of impending doom. David's grip tightened around the edge of the table as he fought the urge to lunge forward. This wasn't just a business meeting, it was a declaration of war against their lives. Your lives aren't just numbers on a balance sheet. Keith shouted, uncharacteristically passionate. The energy shifted as all eyes turned to him. We're not just here for profit. We have families, dreams. Don't treat us like pawns. For a brief moment, it felt like the room collectively exhaled, voices rising like a tide. Yes. We matter. The rallying cry united them, voices thick with emotion. The expulsion of their shared frustrations filled the space, but the figure remained unmoved. You think raising your voices will change anything? This meeting is simply a formality. There's nothing you can do to change the outcome. David felt the air thicken. Despair threatened to seep into the cracks of their bravery, but he couldn't let that happen. They had come too far. We won. Be silenced. He called out, fighting the sinking sensation. We will fight for what is right. We'll gather our evidence, go public if we have to. The figure finally moved closer, a glint of amusement flashing in their eyes. I admire your tenacity. But be very careful what you wish for. You might not like what you find, they warned, and began to retreat. The crowd, still buzzing with a mix of anger and fear, turned their attention back to each other. Had they just engaged in a battle of wills? David felt invigorated yet terrified. They could feel the stakes rising, the threat looming just above their heads like a dark cloud. We can't let this end here, he said, glancing at Keith, who nodded in agreement. Laurie stepped forward, emboldened. We need a plan, a real plan. We won't back down. Not now. Not ever. Everyone's eyes brightened, new determination blooming in the air. As they began to rally around ideas, David's mind raced. What were the implications of what they had just faced? But then, as if the universe was answering his unspoken question, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out to discover a message that made his stomach drop, an insider tip regarding a corporate meeting that could expose everything. Could this lead to the evidence they needed, the key to dismantle the oppressive hold of their corporation? He turned to the group, heart pounding with urgency. I think we may have our chance to turn the tide. They stood on the precipice of an incredible opportunity, the air thick with potential. But would the truth set them free, or would it seal their fate? With that message glowing ominously on his screen, David felt his breath hitch. The words danced in his mind, fueling both hope and dread. This could change everything. He glanced up at Laurie and Keith, their faces stricken with curiosity, each one of them hanging onto his every word. What does it say? Laurie leaned closer, her eyes searching his. It's about a secret meeting. One where they discuss layoffs and worse, the way they plan to cut costs. David's voice trembled slightly as he spoke. The gravity of what they were facing was undeniable, and the reality of corporate greed rippled through his veins like fire. What do you mean worse? Keith's voice was steady, but their eyes were full of unspoken fears. Downsizing isn't even the worst of it. They're considering outsourcing, and possibly even selling us off to another company, David replied, gripping his phone like a lifeline. Laurie's mouth fell open. Outsourcing? They'd put us all out of jobs. It's inhumane. No, David said firmly. We can't let that happen. We have to get to that meeting. If we can expose them before any of this goes down, we might just have a shot. The air around them shifted. What had started as uncertainty began to take shape as a plan. David could see the wheels turning in each of their minds. It was as if they were all connected. The fear that had been divisive now grew roots of unity. We can gather evidence after hours, Keith suggested, already strategizing. Get someone inside. We have to make sure we document everything. Let us split up the tasks. I can stay late at the office, David offered quickly. I could blend in, act like I'm still working. He felt adrenaline surge at the thought of putting himself in the line of fire. And I'll shoot off some emails to our contacts, Laurie chimed in. We need to get ahead of this. The room crackled with energy, each person ready to do their part. David's heart raced, filled with the thrill of their potential victory. But lingering in the back of his mind was a flicker of fear. Would their fight put them in more danger? Then, just like a dagger crashing through the gathering storm, a voice emerged from the back of the room. It was Trevor from accounting, a man usually shy and reserved. What if they find out? What if we're exposed? Silence fell, and the uncomfortable realization washed over them. What if they were caught? What if retaliation came heavy and swift? Every face around the room was a mosaic of uncertainty and fear, a reminder of the very real risks they were taking. We can't think like that, Keith finally broke the silence, voice calm but insistent. We need to move forward. If we don't do this, then what's left for us? David nodded, trying to channel his own fears into resolve. But inside, he couldn't shake the darkness that clouded his thoughts. If their mission went south, it could spell disaster for them all. David, how will we know when the meeting is? Lori asked, urgency in her voice. He glanced back at his phone. The message didn't say, but she mentioned this week. I'll do whatever it takes to find out. As they leaned into their newfound mission, a surge of unity melted away doubts and fears. They could face whatever came next together. But in the pit of his stomach, an unsettling voice whispered, was this fight worth the risk? Only a few steps into their plan and already they found themselves on the brink. Was it too late to turn back? Just then, an unexpected sound echoed from the hallway, swift footsteps approaching. David's blood ran cold. Who was it? Did someone overhear? As the doorknob turned, silhouettes pushed through. The tension in the room surged once again, hearts racing in sync. What now? David muttered, readying himself for whatever deed fate had in store. But as the door swung wide, revealing actual corporate heavies, he realized that their battle had only just begun. Would they stand firm, or would fear prove stronger than their resolve? The door creaked open, and in stepped two men in sharp suits. Their faces were a juxtaposition of confidence and indifference, but the air thickened with tension as they scanned the room. David felt his heart tap out a desperate rhythm. This wasn't just a meeting anymore. It was an invasion. Who are you? Keith asked, his voice steady despite the tempest brewing in David's chest. The taller of the two men stepped forward, a polished smile barely masking a predatory glint in his eyes. We're here for some routine checks. I suggest you all return to work. His words dripped with authority, making it evident that they weren't here to chat. David exchanged glances with Lori and Keith. Hope flickered, battling the growing anxiety. This wasn't a coincidence. They were looking for something, and David knew they had to act quickly. Excuse me, but we're just discussing a project. David's voice came out stronger than he felt. Each word felt like a lifeline he desperately clung to. Can we help you with anything? The man tilted his head slightly, studying David. Routine. Just compiling reports, you know. If you'll excuse us. His smile remained, but his eyes narrowed, like the calm before a storm. Why don't you let us in on the findings? It could help us improve our efficiency. Lori's brave challenge hung in the air. David wanted to grab her and pull her back, but there was fire in her eyes. Each word sent warmth through David, lighting a glow of rebellion in that dread-filled moment. Well, that's the issue, isn't it? Not everyone is entitled to that information, the second man said, crossing his arms. The power dynamics shifted. David's stomach flipped at the reality sinking in. They weren't just here to check. They were watching. Let us get back to that project then, Keith interjected, stepping up beside David and Lori. If there's nothing else we can do for you, we need to finish this report. His tone was assertive, yet the flicker of fear crossed his face. David could sense the fortress of resolve building among the three of them but realized it was trembling. After a pause that felt like forever, the two men shared a look, a silent exchange loaded with tension. Very well. But don't let us catch you out of line, the first man said, turning to leave the room. David exhaled, relief washing over him as the door clicked shut. They were still in their small bubble, safe for now, but the certainty of their mission hung heavy in the air. "What do we do now?" Trevor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Keep moving forward," David replied, feeling both invigorated and scared. "I need to gain full access to the company's email server. That's where we'll get the details on the meeting." Lori nodded, determination radiating from her. "I'll prep my connections. They might have intel on who's running this operation from above." As they began to hash out their next steps, David glanced at the clock. Time was slipping away. They were racing against a clock that ticked with the weight of their fear, yet uncertainty ignited a fire. "Be careful," Keith said softly, a note of concern veiling his determination. "If they catch you, then we know we need a backup plan," David interrupted, his heart pounding. This fight was already beyond anything he'd ever imagined. He had stepped into the tangled world of corporate conspiracies, yet he couldn't turn back now. Suddenly, a sinking dread crashed into him. What if they were already too late? Were the very people they wanted to expose watching their every move? Outside the office, laughter echoed, colleagues, oblivious to the looming storm, chatting carelessly about deadlines and project updates. David gritted his teeth, a surge of urgency driving him. He had to act fast. Just then, his phone buzzed. A new email flashed on the screen. David's heart raced as he opened it. With a deep breath, he realized it could hold the key to what was about to happen or seal their fate forever. Would it lead them to victory or derail everything they had fought for? The room was tense, alive with anticipation as David opened the email. The message, riddled with details about the meeting's South time and place, pulsed like a heartbeat. He felt the weight of possibility settle over him. This could be their moment to seize the truth. "Guys, listen up," he called, raising the phone to share the news. "Tomorrow night, they're having a closed meeting. We have to get inside. We must document everything." Lori stepped closer, eyes wide. "This is it. We could expose them right when the knife is about to drop." As they all grasped the gravity of the moment, a newfound sense of urgency ignited within them. They were united, their fears momentarily forgotten. "We need to prepare," Keith said, the fire in his voice steady. "We go in as one team. No hesitation." The room filled with quick discussions about tactics, gathering information, and planning their approach. David felt a thrill mixed with anxiety. What if they got caught? But the fire of determination burned stronger. They were no longer just fighting for their jobs, they were fighting for everything they believed in. As evening approached, each of them suited up with a blend of nerves and adrenaline. David felt the tightness in his chest as they gathered outside the building, the weight of silent resolve among them. With every step toward the entrance, the stakes grew heavier. "We stick to the plan," David reminded them. "Once we get in, we find a way to cover the meeting, and then we get out." "It's showtime," Lori whispered, glancing nervously at David. He nodded, ready to meet whatever lay inside. The door opened, and they moved through the lobby, heartbeats in sync as they navigated the well-lit corridors. The whispers of executives echoed, taunting their resolve. Their breaths slowed as they approached the conference room, where the meeting was already in progress. David's pulse thudded, a quick reminder of the importance of this moment. They found a nearby supply closet, crammed between glass walls and shadows. "We'll wait here until they settle," he whispered, body tense with adrenaline. Time felt suspended. They could hear distant voices growing louder, each syllable a thread weaving them deeper into the fabric of the corporate gamble they were about to undertake. Finally, the door swung open, and silhouettes drifted in. "Ready?" David murmured. The nods from Lori and Keith filled him with determination. Eager hands set up phones with cameras, ready to capture every word, every secret. They waited, breaths shallow, as the executives settled into heated conversation. As the meeting unfolded, David strained to gather every detail, the weight of their mission pressing heavily on his shoulders. He could feel the fear but also hope surging through the group. The executives began discussing cutbacks, names mentioned, layoffs forecasted, decisions made without thought for the lives behind them. "Can you believe this?" Keith murmured as he adjusted his phone for better angles, outrage boiling beneath his composure. David's heart raced. This was the betrayal he feared, a betrayal that destroyed every home that relied on this company. "We'll expose this," he whispered fiercely. "We have to." Suddenly, the door to the room burst open. "Security!" a voice barked. Panic surged through David like icy water splashing against his skin. The executives looked alarmed. "Go, go!" David urging everyone to flee. They slipped from the closet close to the back of the room, eluding discovery, adrenaline propelling them forward into the maze of hallways. As they rounded a corner, David turned, heart pounding fiercely. "We need to get this footage to the media." "This is it," Laurie said, bursting with resilience. "They can't silence us now. We'll expose them." The thrill of unity electrified the group as they hurried to escape the shadows of the company that had loomed over them for too long. Outside, they drew breath, fresh air full of possibility. The sun had dipped low, a canvas of colors painting the sky. "We made it," David breathed, relief washing over him. "No backing down now," Keith insisted. "Together," David affirmed, holding up the phones. "For our families, for our dreams, and for truth." The sense of accomplishment filled them, but they knew the fight was just beginning. The journey ahead led toward uncharted territory, but it was a path of solidarity against the darkness. If courage could shift the tides, together they stood ready to confront the storm, armed with the undeniable truth that would fuel their fight for justice. The future awaited them. Promise crackled in the air like static, and David held on to the hope that now coursed through him. This wasn't merely a battle against their employer, it was a fight against injustice, unfair systems, and the invisible chains that had held them back. This was their moment. As they hopped into their vehicles, David felt tenderness well up in his heart. "Let us make a difference," he said, his voice thick with emotion. And as they drove off into the fading light, hope flickered brightly, casting shadows of change that would ripple through their lives, forever. But no, it wasn't just their lives, it was the lives of everyone tied to that company, the hidden voices finally ready to roar. Now, it was time to roar. Don't wait another moment, you need to subscribe now to our channel so you don't miss any of the incredible stories we have to share next. Hit that like button right now to feed the algorithm and help us reach more ears hungry for change. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear your feelings about this ending. And for sure share this video with at least 5 friends who you know need to witness this transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second. Together, we can make this world a better place.